and gentlemen. I call our first speaker, Tom Stokes.
Thanks very much. It's an honour to be asked to speak here today, and far better to be here than to be behind the barricades in the GPO, locked away from the commemoration that should rightfully belong to the citizens of Ireland and not to some political class that wants to have a private party, in case we might get to hear a story that might incite us to change the system in Ireland. I was going to speak ad lib, and then I thought that because of what I wanted to say, I should read it. And I'm reminded before I start of the words of a song by the Animals. One of the lines is, "Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood." So hopefully by the end of it, you get my drift. So it's far better to be here than barricaded away from the GPO, the spiritual home of the 1916 revolution. While the corrupt state makes a pretense of commemorating 1916, meanwhile insulting the citizens with their exclusion, the very citizens that are the central focus of the proclamation of the Irish Republic. That corrupt political class that is at the heart of the 92-year-long counter-revolution, with its political manifestation in the three parties of permanent misgovernment, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Labour, is determined to downplay the message and meaning of the 1916 revolution. Those parties and the political class that they serve could not survive a proper scrutiny of their actions and attitudes when compared to the generosity and courage and their commitment to a far better Ireland of the patriots of 1916. To avoid that scrutiny, they have consistently misrepresented 1916 as a nationalist rebellion. They fear the effect that a proper understanding of the beautiful promise of the Irish Republic would have on the people, if only the people knew of the far better life that that Republic had to offer them than the pseudo-democratic, corrupt state that we have endured for 92 years. And so, since the coup of 1921, with the signing of the Treaty and the creation of the illegitimate Free State in 1922, they have distorted and manipulated the facts and the narrative of the 1916 revolution, or as they would call it, the Rising or Rebellion. They would like to delegitimise it. The revolutionaries had no mandate, they say. Since when was a revolution preceded by a ballot? Never. 1916 was not about simple rebellion. It was about initiating a profound change in the social, economic and political life of the people of Ireland. It was about revolution, about transformation, about creating a new sovereign state based on justice and equality for all. More than that, it was about making the people sovereign. No monarchs, no privileged rulers, no higher social class. That self-appointed and self-perpetuating regime cannot tolerate these ideas, and so they are scurrying around trying to find ways to create a perverse version of commemoration on the centenary of the revolution. Their latest scheme is to invite the English Queen or some member of her family to be present at the GPO in 2016. The best response by citizens would be to boycott the state affair. There would be a far better, more dignified, more sincere, more creative and more imaginative commemoration on Republic Day 2016, the 100th anniversary to the day of the issuing of the proclamation of the Irish Republic and the start of the revolution. But enough of the corrupt plutocrats and oligarchs that have created a pseudo-democratic dictatorship based on untruths and on the manipulation of public opinion through an equally corrupt propaganda machine, the national media. Enough of them. What about us? What about we Republicans? How have we fared? What have we done to put the Republic back in place? 3 years ago I arrived here early for the funeral of Robert Ballagh's wife Betty, and I went to the Republican plot to fill in some time. While I walked among the graves of the 1916 patriots, I wondered what they would make of an Irish state that had just surrendered its sovereignty to the EU and IMF. And I wondered what they would have to say to us. They left us a task. That task was, and still is, to bring back to life the Irish Republic. We know what they paid to establish the Republic, and that price was high. If, listening to the dead in the Republican plot, or in those other places where the patriots rest, they asked me what had been achieved to hold the Republic in place, I would have had to answer nothing. Nothing of significance. If they asked me what had become of Irish republicanism, I would have had to tell them that it still existed, that it had many sincere adherents and many brave volunteers over the years, but that it has been a house divided, more so now than ever. I take my political counsel in the first place from James Connolly, our finest political, social and economic philosopher. In 1897, 19 years before the Revolution, Connolly published Erin's Hope. In the concluding paragraphs, he stated that for any revolution to be successful, it would require bringing together all of the voices of discontent, including those with whom you had differences, to unite in common cause. In 1916, he entered a revolution under those terms, and having warned his citizen army to hold on to their weapons, since some of those they would fight with were not after the same cause, the Irish Republic. 5 years later, he would be proved correct. In 1917, Vladimir Ilyich Lenin stated that James Connolly was right in his approach, that nowhere in the history of revolution had there been a pure revolution. We are a house divided. This weekend there are various commemorations organised by groups and organisations, all of which are Republican. There is little or no sign of solidarity among these groups or organisations. The opposite is the case. Yet all of the good people who belong to all of these organisations say that they are Republicans, that their fidelity is to the Irish Republic, that their wish is to end partition and to establish that Irish Republic. How can a house divided possibly realise those ambitions? How can we ask a divided people on this island to reconcile so as to create, once again, a 32-county Irish Republic, when we ourselves are so divided? When we ourselves cannot engage in dialogue with one another, even though we all say we are Irish Republicans. Of course there are reasons for principled people to fall out with principled people. Of course there is a background to all these splits. But if our overriding principles are Republican, the first of which demands the re-establishment of a true republic on this island, then how can individual or group principles override this? Our enemies in this state, the counter-revolutionary political class, including the parties of permanent misgovernment, partition us to their core, have no problem in uniting despite their spurious public differences, so as to maintain power over the rest of us. We let them win, time after time, by being a house divided. 92 years so far. Are we going to give them another 92 years? As an independent socialist Republican, I see it as my duty to do what I can to advance the cause of the Irish Republic. Following Connolly's advice in Erin's Hope, my interest is in helping, in my small and insignificant way, to gather the voices of discontent into a unified revolutionary force. I do not hold a brief for any particular Republican group or organisation, but for all sincere and committed Republicans. There has never been, in my opinion, a better opportunity in the last 92 years to create a House united against the counter-revolutionary dictatorship. The voices of discontent today include Republicans, socialists, feminists, social activists and others, much like the situation 100 years ago. Most of all, it includes the people, now more than ever discontented with the corruption and exploitation imposed on them by the political class. We've all experienced decades during which the citizens of this state gradually turned their backs on Republican. And there's a little contentious part that I want to talk about, and don't misunderstand me on this. It's just my reading of a situation. There are two indicators now that this is no longer the case. There are signs of a shift in imagination among many Irish people. When Michael D campaigned for the presidency, it was on the central issue of the creation of a true republic built on active citizenship, equality and justice. He received the highest vote of any person in the history of this sorry state. Over 1 million citizens voted for him. And so let's remember today John Higgins, a volunteer in the War of Independence and on the anti-treaty side in the Civil War. Michael D mentioned him explicitly when speaking to the combined Houses of Parliament in Westminster. That was deliberate. And he had a smile on his face when he was reminding them that his father was an IRA man and that Michael D is proud of him and what he did. And I know that's sincere because the first time I met him 17 years ago to interview him for radio, we discussed at length the Irish Republic and the part his father and my grandfather played in the revolutionary struggle. And we've talked about these things since, and I know that he's sincere on the Republic. Revolution begins in the imagination. Michael D, who is a very popular president, is planting ideas in the minds of the people to be harvested later. Revolution begins in the imagination. The second indicator may not be a popular one to mention here, but it is necessary. We need to understand the shift in public opinion that has happened over the past 10 years. From wanting nothing to do with Irish republicanism on the part of most voters in this failed state a decade ago, Sinn Féin currently has 20% support in the polls, and that's likely to be an underestimate. Support for independence is also between 20 and 30%. That represents many voices of discontent among voters. And then there's a third factor, another very, very important one that will come into play now, and that is the centenary of 1916. The state will do its dirty work to minimise its meaning and its effect, but the people will not be fooled, and gradually over the next 2 years we'll see that rise in understanding and knowledge. They may not understand the deep meaning of the words, phrases, sentences and paragraphs of the proclamation of the Irish Republic. They may not yet have the full narrative of that glorious event. They may not yet understand what a great boon in their lives the realisation of that republic would be. But they know, most of them, that 1916 and the Republic belong to them and not to some social political class that parades itself as an elite group. We can, as Republicans, continue to fail in our duty. We can speak back to the dead and tell them that it is beyond us, that we are not up to the task, that internecine strife is more important than the Republic. But I'm not going to do that. I refuse to surrender. The Irish Republic is not a dream. It is a reality waiting to be made happen. Not a shot needs to be fired to make that happen. We need to fire up our imagination and act accordingly for the Republic. Imagine ways to make it happen, to make it a reality. That is our duty. Listen to the dead. They showed us the way. The Irish Republic and nothing less. Thanks for listening.